On lap 11 of the Austrian Grand Prix, Max Verstappen tried to go around the outside of Lewis Hamilton, ran out of road and ended up in the gravel. "Clear penalty," he shouted on the radio. The stewards looked at it and did nothing. Hamilton, in a Ferrari that had no business fighting for the podium, had just squeezed Verstappen off the track and walked away clean. So how did the same driver, in the same car, fade to a distant fifth an hour later, undone by a strategy gamble that fell apart in front of him? The data from Austria has an answer Ferrari did not want to hear. Nobody walked into Spielberg expecting Ferrari to come apart. They arrived at the Red Bull Ring off the back of Hamilton's win in Barcelona, carrying the same rear rims that had cooled their tyres to that victory and a brand new engine upgrade in the back of the car. On Saturday, Hamilton put the Ferrari third on the grid, 1 row behind pole, ahead of Verstappen, ahead of the second Mercedes. From the outside, this looked like the second fastest car at the track, and everything pointed to a podium fight on Sunday. Barcelona had felt like a turning point, and the grid order said it was real. The numbers underneath told a quieter story. Almost nobody was reading them yet. To understand how badly the day unraveled, you have to look at who was actually setting the pace. George Russell took pole on Saturday and led most of Sunday from the front, controlling the race the way only a genuinely quick car can. Behind him, the real fight was between Verstappen and the second Mercedes of Andrea Kimi Antonelli, 2 cars trading blows all the way to the final lap, where Verstappen clung on to second by less than 0.4 of a second. Antonelli hounded the Red Bull corner after corner, the gap never stretching beyond a second, the kind of duel Ferrari fans had hoped Hamilton would be part of. Instead, while 3 cars fought over the podium, the red cars were quietly slipping out of the picture behind them. A Mercedes 1-3, a Red Bull wedged between them, and Ferrari nowhere. The race around them was chaos too. Both Cadillacs were gone early, their brakes overheating so badly that one of them caught fire in the pit lane. Carlos Sainz rolled his Williams to a stop with a suspected electrical failure. Lance Stroll's Aston Martin gave up as well. The attrition was thinning the field and handing out free positions, the kind of day a quick car turns into a podium and a slow car turns into damage limitation. Ferrari spent the afternoon finding out which one it was driving. When the lights went out, Hamilton drove like a man who believed the grid order. He went straight after Charles Leclerc, his own teammate, and was past him before the end of the opening lap, climbing into second place and setting off after the leader. For the first stint, he hung there, inside touching distance of the Mercedes ahead, looking every bit like a podium contender. That move on Leclerc was no fluke either. It was the 6th time in 8 races this season that Hamilton has finished ahead of his teammate, and the 5th in a row. The driver so many people wrote off after a bumpy start to life in red has quietly turned the intra-team fight into a habit. On a weekend where almost nothing went right, beating the other Ferrari was the one box he kept ticking. And that is the cruel part of this story, because while Hamilton looked alive in those opening laps, the car was already busy hurting itself. The first stint was the tell, if anyone had been watching closely. To stay glued to Russell's gearbox, Hamilton was asking more of his rear tyres than the Ferrari could afford. Every lap spent hanging on to the Mercedes poured more heat into rubber that was already complaining. Vasseur admitted afterward that the team overpushed in those opening laps and chewed the life out of the tyres trying to keep up. The early pace was a mirage. The bill for it arrived one stint later, and it was steep. Hamilton's best moment of the afternoon came on lap 11, and it came against Verstappen. The Red Bull arrived at turn 3 and took the place. Hamilton came straight back through turn 4. On the exit of turn 6, he ran Verstappen wide, all the way out to the gravel, and that was when the radio call came in. Clear penalty. The stewards reviewed it and decided there was nothing to answer. Hamilton kept the position. Afterward, he was unbothered by the complaint. "You do not expect to go around the outside of a champion," he pointed out. Verstappen had been behind at the apex, so by Hamilton's reading of it, the Red Bull should have backed out of the move. He left Verstappen exactly enough room to stay on the road and not a centimetre more. For one corner, on instinct and old rivalry, the veteran looked like the Hamilton of a decade ago, picking a fight with the best driver of the current era and winning it. It was a snapshot of a rivalry that has shaped a decade of the sport. Hamilton and Verstappen have fought for world titles, traded paint, and pushed each other to the edge of the rulebook more times than either would care to count. So when the older man held his line and forced the younger champion onto the grass, it carried weight far beyond a single position on lap 11. For a moment, the old order reasserted itself. It would not last the hour. This is where the story takes a turn nobody expected, because winning that wheel-to-wheel duel was very nearly the last thing that went right for Hamilton all afternoon. Ferrari blinked first on strategy. Hamilton was the first of the front runners into the pit lane, coming in on lap 13 for a set of hard tyres and rejoining down in 11th. The plan was to leapfrog the cars ahead by stopping early and running in clean air, a classic undercut. The problem was what that early stop exposed. The degradation Hamilton had been fighting in the first stint was already worse than the team had braced for. He had warned them before the race that he did not believe a two-stop would hold together. Inside a dozen laps, he was being proven right. Think about that for a second. The driver told his engineers the plan would not survive contact with the race, and the race agreed with him almost immediately. That early stop seemed like a small tactical move at the time. It turned out to be the first domino in a sequence that would drag him out of the points fight he had qualified for. From 11th, he now had to climb back through a midfield he should never have been mixing with, burning tyre life and energy he could not spare to undo a problem the strategy had just created. The car that started third was doing the work of a car that started 11th and paying for it twice over. Pay attention to this next detail because it explains everything that follows. The second time Verstappen caught Hamilton, the Red Bull did not bother with the outside again. He had learned. He went down the inside of turn 6, took the apex cleanly and made the move stick. This time, Hamilton had nothing to answer with. He could not stay in the Red Bull's mirrors. He could not respond. The same Ferrari that had been quick enough to bully a Red Bull off the road 20 laps earlier was now sliding backward, and the driver could feel exactly what was slipping away underneath him. He was running out of energy at the end of the straights. Strip out the jargon, and it is simple. Every car on the grid carries a store of electrical power. It pours out as it accelerates down a straight. Picture it as a second fuel tank, one that empties as the car gathers speed. Ferrari's tank was running dry before the end of the long straights at the Red Bull Ring. The Mercedes tank was not. On paper, the two cars could reach the same top speed. In the final 100 meters before each braking zone, they were living in different worlds. Lap after lap, across the full race distance, Hamilton was handing back a thin sliver of road every single time the power behind him faded a fraction early. And that one weakness poisoned everything else. It is why he could not respond when Verstappen came back at him. It is why much later he could not clear a slower McLaren on fresher tyres. A car that runs out of punch at the end of the straight cannot chase and cannot defend. It can only manage and hope nobody notices. In a 30-second highlight reel, Hamilton looked like a man having an off day. In the data, he was wrestling a car that was fighting itself. It was not only Hamilton's car either. On the other side of the garage, Leclerc was suffering the same disease. He had started second, gone backward all afternoon, complained over the radio that the rear of his Ferrari had no grip, and trailed home 8th. Two cars, two drivers, the same symptoms on the same day. When both examples of a car struggle in exactly the same way, the finger stops pointing at the drivers and starts pointing at the machine. Hamilton beating Leclerc again was almost a footnote. The headline was that both red cars were sick. The Friday timing screen made the trap obvious. In practice, both Ferraris were clocked at 323 km an hour through the speed trap. That was level with both McLarens, level with Verstappen's Red Bull, and only a couple of kilometers an hour shy of the quickest Mercedes. On raw top speed, Ferrari was right there in the fight, which is precisely why the straight-line problem fooled so many people. The car could reach the same number on the screen. It simply could not get there the same way, or hold it the same way, once the electrical side started tapping out. To put a figure on it, Hamilton kept circling back to one number. On Friday, he said, Ferrari had been 0.6 of a second down on straight-line speed alone. He admitted he had not even seen the full race data yet when he said it, but he was certain the gap was not small. 0.6 on one stretch of one lap. Stretch that across an entire Grand Prix, and you begin to see where 26 seconds of deficit is hiding. This is the part the timing screen never shows you. A casual viewer saw Hamilton lose places and put it down to bad luck or a bad car. What actually happened was more specific and more fixable than that. The car was quick almost everywhere. The trouble lived in one precise window at the top end of the straight, where the electrical boost should have still been pushing and instead had already gone quiet. Find that window in the data, and the whole confusing afternoon snaps into focus. It got more awkward than just lap time. Midway through the race, the team had to ask Hamilton to drop the car out of its highest power mode to manage temperatures and wind it back up again later. A driver scrapping for track position should not be babysitting the very thing he is scrapping with. Hamilton was doing both at once and quietly losing both fights. The two problems were tangled together. Pushing the energy system hard enough to fight at the front drove the temperatures up. Backing off to cool it down threw away the very lap time he was chasing. Every time Ferrari solved one half of that equation, the other half got worse. All of it The early stop and the fading energy set up the gamble that defined Hamilton's race. When Sainz rolled to a halt and brought out a virtual safety car, Ferrari grabbed the chance to pit Hamilton again on the cheap. But rather than settle for a tidy two-stop, they reached for something nobody else on the lead lap was willing to try. They fitted a set of soft tyres and committed Hamilton to a three-stop race. It was a roll of the dice, a bid to slice through traffic quickly and claw back the time a slow car had cost him. On a normal afternoon, a three-stop is the sign of a car with pace to burn, a driver charging from the front on fresh rubber. Here it was the opposite. It was a team out of better ideas, throwing tyres at a problem tyres could not solve. The soft compound was the boldest part of it. Nobody else near the front trusted that tyre to go the distance. Ferrari leaned on it anyway, because the alternative was admitting mid-race that the car simply was not quick enough, and no race team wants to say that out loud while the lights are still green. It did not work. Hamilton came in for the third and final time on lap 43, dropping in behind Oscar Piastri's McLaren, and there he stuck. Piastri was on a two-stop, on older rubber, in theory running the slower plan. Yet Hamilton, with fresher tyres and an extra stop in hand, could not find a way through. The McLaren held him at arm's length to the flag. Hamilton crossed the line fifth, 26 seconds behind the winning Mercedes, the same Mercedes he had out-qualified the day before. If you are getting something out of this breakdown, take 1 second and subscribe. We go behind the timing screen on every Ferrari and Hamilton weekend, the part the broadcast never stops to explain, and Silverstone is going to need exactly this kind of look. Team principal Fred Vasseur refused to hide behind the strategy. The strategy is not the issue, he said flatly. The real problem, in his words, was that Ferrari simply did not have the pace of Mercedes or Verstappen, and they had taken risks on strategy to try to mask it. They had overpushed in the opening laps chasing Russell, he admitted, and ruined the tyres doing it, which fed straight back into the degradation that wrecked the first stint. Leclerc, complaining of a rear with no grip, put it in fewer words. When there is no pace, the strategy always looks bad. So if the strategy was a symptom and not the cause, what was the cause? Hamilton had already named it before the cameras moved on. It is deployment, he said. Not outright power, it is deployment at the end of the straight, and Ferrari has to work out why and how to improve it. That one word reframes the whole weekend. What beat Hamilton in Austria was not the engine itself, it was the electrical energy behind it, draining a fraction too soon, every single lap, until a fraction grew into 26 seconds. And here is the detail everyone missed. Austria was the exact weekend Ferrari bolted on a brand new engine upgrade, the first significant step on their power unit all season. The temptation almost writes itself. New engine, slow race, blame the new engine. Except the people who built it were saying the opposite. Ferrari's own power unit boss described the upgrade as a relatively minor step, one that would not change the competitive order on its own. It was a small gain to the combustion side, paired with a new fuel, never sold as a silver bullet and never expected to be won. People thought they had the full picture there. They were wrong. The reason Ferrari was even cleared to bring that upgrade tells you where the team truly stands. The governing body spent the first 6 races of the season measuring every engine on the grid against the strongest one, the Red Bull. Ferrari came out more than 4% down on that benchmark, far enough adrift to earn the right to bring 2 upgrades this year in an effort to close the gap. Mercedes, by contrast, sat close enough to the benchmark to earn only a single upgrade token. Read that the right way, and it stings. The team Hamilton walked away from is near the top of the engine order. The team he joined is far enough back that the rulebook hands it extra development just to keep the fight honest. This first upgrade was the small step. The one meant to actually move the needle is a deeper reworking of the turbocharger, keeping the same size of compressor wheel but changing the number and angle of its blades. And that is not due until Zandvoort, or Monza, still weeks down the road. That timeline is the quiet crisis. Every race that passes without the bigger step is a race where Mercedes can keep scoring at the rate they managed in Austria, while Ferrari runs a car it already knows is short on energy where it matters most. The fix exists on paper, it just is not bolted to the car yet, and the calendar does not wait for anyone. Think about what that combination means. The upgrade that just arrived was never going to fix this, and the upgrade that might has not arrived yet. Austria did not break Ferrari. Austria showed Ferrari, and showed Hamilton, exactly how wide the gap to Mercedes really is right now, on a weekend with no fresh part left to hide behind. Even those clever rear rims that helped deliver Barcelona, the ones the governing body is now watching closely, could do nothing here. A trick for cooling tyres is a brilliant advantage on a hot, abrasive track. On a power circuit where the race is won and lost at the end of the straight, it cannot rescue a car that keeps running out of energy. That is the uncomfortable truth Austria exposed. This was not one bad call or one unlucky safety car. The pace deficit was structural, baked into how the car uses its energy, and it showed up against the two fastest cars on the grid on a day when Ferrari brought everything it had. Hamilton, to his credit, did not dodge it. He called the weekend a reality check and named the exact problem instead of pointing at the pit wall. That is the difference between a driver in denial and a driver trying to drag a team forward. The diagnosis was honest. The cure is the hard part, and it is not coming this week. The standings did the rest of the damage. Russell's win and Hamilton's fifth flipped their order in the championship. Hamilton arrived in Austria sitting second. He left it third, with Russell leapfrogging him by 6 points. Antonelli still leads the drivers' table on 171 points. Russell has climbed to 131. Hamilton has slipped to 125, now 46 points off the lead, in a car that just spent a whole weekend going backward. In the constructors' battle, the picture is harsher still. Mercedes have stretched out to 302 points. Ferrari sit on 204. 98 points back, and that gap is growing, not shrinking. At this stage of a season, 98 points is not the end of the fight, but it is the kind of number that turns a title challenge into a salvage operation. Ferrari did not sign Hamilton to finish a polite second in a Mercedes family feud. They signed him believing he could win it all in red. Austria was the day that belief ran straight into the stopwatch and lost. And Russell's win was not a fluke that flatters the gap. Mercedes have turned raw pace into results at the front, with Antonelli leading the standings and Russell now winning races. The car that beat Hamilton in Austria is the class of the field right now, and it is being driven by the two men sitting directly ahead of him in the championship. That is the company Ferrari is chasing, and the distance is measured in more than points. Hamilton, for his part, called the Red Bull Ring one of his worst circuits, a track that has never suited his style. There is a little shelter in that. The next race offers almost none. Formula One goes straight to Silverstone, a sprint weekend on Hamilton's home ground, the British Grand Prix. A sprint format raises the stakes on both sides, with 2 races and 2 sets of points, 2 separate chances for the deployment problem to either vanish or follow him home. There is nowhere better for Hamilton to answer the question Austria asked. There is also nowhere worse to fail it, in front of the one crowd that has never stopped believing in him. Watch the speed traps on Sunday. Watch what happens to Hamilton through the final third of the long straights, the exact place Austria came apart. If he is still there at the line, still fighting, then the Red Bull Ring really was just a bad fit. If he drifts backward again the moment the energy runs thin, then the problem came home with him, and the second half of this season gets a lot harder for Ferrari to explain away. All of it leaves Ferrari with one question to answer. Not whether the engine is fast enough on the board, because on the board it almost is, but whether they can fix what happens at the end of the straight before the title quietly drifts out of reach. The data from Austria handed them the answer in black and white. What they choose to do with it is the next chapter of the season. If you want to see how that chapter unfolds, the Silverstone breakdown lands the moment the checkered flag drops. Subscribe now, so it is waiting for you when you need it.